Welcome to Surrounded by Sports, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Perkins, and today I have Pelham, Alabama Parks and Rec Director Brian Cooper. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Great to see you, buddy.
Great to see you, man.
Been a
Brian,
while.
yeah, like to actually see each other. We talked on the phone the other day, but yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
long time. Yeah, good to see you. Brian was Parks and Rec Director here in Pensacola, Florida. He is a Pensacola native, a UWF grad, along with other schools. He has managed intramural sports at multiple schools, run city athletics through Parks and Recreation, and owned and operated an umpires officials organization. He has helped organize the World Games in Birmingham and officiated the Pro Bowl this year.
That's right.
Hopefully, Brian will help me understand all of that and you as well as you watch and talk about those things over the next little bit of time. Sound good, Brian?
Sounds great, Kevin.
Good deal. Good deal. We'll do all that and more after this. Welcome back. Brian, before we dive into community sports and umpire and all that other stuff, let's get a little background on you. Pensacola native?
That's right. Yeah, Kevin, you and I went to high school together out at Tate back in the '80s.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I
Inslee.
know that's aging us, but that's all right.
That's all right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We earned it. Let's see. You told me I didn't know the story of how you wound up in college. Now you mentioned that you hadn't played a whole ton of organized athletics, which is fascinating because your job and career have been organizing athletics up to a large degree, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation. But so, how did you wind up going to UWF?
Well, Kevin, when we were in school, we were just trying to get through school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't playing any ball growing up. My mom was a single mother, worked out at Monsanto. So getting me to practice or getting me to games it was really out of the question. She'd sign me up every now and then after I begged, but I couldn't go to practices. So obviously the coaches wouldn't play me. And obviously I wasn't developing any skills. But I love being out in the yard and playing. I love playing at PE. I love being in athletics from a non-organized standpoint.
Right.
So I'm just, going down the hall one day and they made an announcement at school about if you haven't made your college decision, please see a counselor. And I was like, oh, I guess I better start thinking about college if I'm going to go to college. And it was like late my senior year. So
Right.
I went down
Right.
and met with the counselor and she said, have you applied anywhere? I said, no, ma'am. And she said, well, don't you think you ought to get on that? And so I said, yeah. So I threw out an application at Pensacola Junior College, now Pensacola State, West Florida, and Florida State. Florida State sent me a real quick thanks, but no thanks. And West Florida accepted me. I don't know how, but they did. And my mom had enough savings bonds to help get me in and get me going. So I ended up helping myself through most of it, but she got me going. And so I enrolled at UWF, and that's how I got in college. It
Right. Now,
I didn't make good grades in high school. I didn't make a great score on the ACT. But somehow I made it just enough to get in at UWF.
right. Right. And then when you get to UWF, like your mom was working at Monsanto, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Right. And so you're having to kind of help pay those college bills. You take a couple of jobs over there. And
Yeah. So when I was first out of school, I was like, man, I need a job. And a lot of people will remember Bill Rowe, who you coached our youth football league there at Inslee. I played for him one season. It probably, like I said, play was not the right word, but I went and saw him at his jewelry store over off Davis Highway and asked him for a job. He said, "There's absolutely no way I'm putting you to work in my jewelry store, but come to Woodham High School Tuesday night, 6 o'clock, room 108 or whatever, and we'll find something for you." So I went in there and it was just a room full of men. And I was like, okay, what have I gotten myself into? And they start talking football officiating. And I was like, oh, whoa, what is this? And real quick, I was like, I like this. And I was digging it a lot. And we just, I just felt at home right there. I felt finally, somewhere I felt comfortable. And I
right.
went back the next Tuesday and I started learning the rules and I started officiating. So fast forward to that spring semester of my freshman year, and I saw a flyer around campus that said intramural officials wanted. I was like, well, I officiate youth sports already. I can do that.
Right.
So I went over there and I umpired softball that semester. And the lady that was my boss, she left the university. So they asked me and the other student that was kind of like starting to help her, asked us to run the intramural program as students, as sophomores. So we were like, yeah, we don't know what we're doing, but let's do it. So we jumped in and started running intramurals my sophomore year and ran intramurals at UWF the rest of the time I was there. Started a Student Officials Association, UWF Student Officials Association, to help us get money because that's how they funded the department, was through a student association. So
Right.
that helped us get more funding in the department. And then I was working for the provost, working for intramurals, umpiring and officiating, trying to make ends meet, trying to help my mom not have to spend so much money for me to go to college. So that's how I got into officiating. That's how I got into college, and that's how I started just making sports. Started making sports my career. I really didn't know it at the time. I was a business major, but
Right.
soon thereafter I realized this is what I wanted to do.
Right, but that's why one thing we always talk. One thing I tend to like to harp on is that what you do leads you to what you're going to do, right? And
Yeah, that's what happened.
you're a business major, but hey, I'm going to officiate. But hey, you don't have anybody run the department. I'll do that. So when you get out, that's kind of what your career path was, right? You wind up, you get your degree at UWF, and then you move on.
Yeah, so when I was out at UWF, I was like, man, I really want to start setting some goals for life. And I set some goals to become a professional official in either football or baseball. And I said, how can I achieve these goals? And I was like, if I could do what my bosses are doing in the recreation department, they seem to have a little more flexibility than my job at McRae's, which I was also working at McRae's. They don't seem to have a lot of flexibility in their hours, but my bosses at UWF did. So I
Right,
was like, man, I think I might want to pursue this as a career. So as my 4 or 5 years at UWF progressed, they started talking to me about career paths and networking at conferences and how I could find my way into a graduate assistantship to do intramurals at another university, which
right,
would give me another resume building opportunity. And so I took that opportunity to go to Eastern Kentucky for my graduate work, which was a blessing. It was a 2 year program, but you could get out in a year if you had the right undergraduate work. And I was married. My wife was pregnant. So that 1 year program really, I had to fast track it and get out of grad school in 1 year, and I
right,
did. And so that led me to my first job in the field in North Carolina at UNC Wilmington. So the intramural director there for 3 years. And I was officiating every night, football, basketball, baseball, football year round, just
right,
trying to make ends meet because, young, struggling family. They weren't paying a lot. I
right,
think I signed on at UNCW for 19,000 a year back in 92. So
right.
it wasn't a whole lot of money for a young family. So I had to do what I had to do to make ends meet.
Right. Now you were also getting, I mean, you were able to supplement by officiating in other ways and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, every
Yeah.
night, every night, I'd go do football, youth football during the week, JV football, Friday night varsity football at the time on the clock, and then eventually on the field. And then Saturday, I'd go do 4 youth games.
Hmm.
Basketball season would roll around, and I'd be in a gym every night. I could find a game, and
Right.
baseball, same thing. Baseball, softball, wherever the youth park or the middle school baseball took me. I was on the diamond or a gym or on a football field. I don't
Right.
know, 300 days, 300 nights a year, Kevin. I
Yeah.
mean, trying to make it.
Now eventually you wind up at UAB.
Yeah, so after 3 years at UNC Wilmington, the director job at UAB opened up, and the lady there, she was a super nice lady. Her name was Ruth Garner, and I was on a social committee with her, and she recommended me for the job, and I got the job, and man, I was excited. I was going to make $29,000 a year now, and thought, I was going to be able to cut back on my officiating, but then I realized now with two sons, I need more money. So,
Right.
demands of a young family needing a house and all that. So I continue to officiate, but I'm progressing now. I'm starting to do high school sports exclusively, varsity games, starting to get better games. And so that's how sort of my officiating career trajectory is going at the time.
Forget my ignorance, but when you're running an intramural department, is there a need to make it profitable?
Not so much, but you're given a budget and you have to stay within it. And
Hmm.
sometimes when you have ideas and you're new, the only way you can fund those ideas is to go out and fundraise. So if I want to
Right.
do a homecoming 5K, I got to go get sponsors. If I want to do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament that's not in the programmed in the budget when I got there, I had to go find a sponsor. And I
Right.
was really good back then at getting national sponsors that were already running programs at nationwide at other universities. I was really good at working those angles at the conference to get in with those people. So Schick, the Razor, for example, they sponsored a national tournament called Schick Super Hoops 3-on-3. So I'd bring them in. And then Nest, uh, it's one of the candy bars. I can't remember. They wanted in, and they wanted these college students. They wanted
Right.
that an avenue. So we got sponsors all the time. But so the recreation program at UAB, when I got there, I was training intramural officials. That was what I was doing at UWF, Eastern Kentucky, UNC Wilmington, and at UNC Wilmington. I got invited to go to the National Intramural Flag Football Tournament and help evaluate officials for the national tournament. So that was another resume builder. And then at UAB, I was able to start getting a staff of my own because I was the director. So I hired a graduate assistant. He came in, he took over some of the training. I helped him, but he took over. And then I started with a $70,000 budget, Kevin. That was in '95. And by 2005, it was a $3.5 million budget with a 250,000 square foot campus recreation center that we built. So it was more than just intramurals. It was recreation. And that was the career goal. The goal was to become a director and
Right.
also have that flexible schedule that would allow me to go and chase that dream. And
Right.
that dream was always out there. Now I'm starting to have my third and fourth sons. So, you might have to start putting dreams on the back burner. And I had to do that a little bit. And I don't
Right.
regret it a bit,
Right.
because I wanted to spend time with them and coach them and spend all my time with them. So, but eventually getting to referee the NFL Pro Bowl, to me, satisfied one of my goals of wanting to referee pro sports one day. So that's how
Right.
I got there. But I got there
Yeah.
eventually, though.
Right.
So,
Now, you wind up with what's your master's in?
master's in Park and Rec Administration from Eastern Kentucky.
Right. So then
Yeah.
when do you begin? Is it in Birmingham that you begin running Parks and Recs?
Well, so I was at the university level. So that was my whole career path. I was going to be a university recreation director my whole life and
Right.
retire from the state of Alabama with 25 years and then figure out what to do with my rest of my working life.
Right.
Um, but along the way, the city of Pensacola job opened up, Parks and Recreation Director job opened. I was like, wow, chance to get back home,
Right.
chance to shift gears. I'd kind of done everything at UAB I could do. I
Right.
didn't really want to move to another state. If I was going to move, my kids were here. If I was going to move, Pensacola was really about the only place I would do it for. And so when that job opened up, I applied. I think there were 87 applicants, and I got the job. And I was like, holy cow, I'm going to get to go home. So I got to go home and work in community recreation for 10 years down there, and that was really a great experience.
What so okay, I want to kind of understand how Parks and Recs run. Again, that's going to be a fundraising thing, right? Like where does the money come from for Parks and Rec?
So a lot of departments let's use the city of Pensacola, for example. You've got general fund departments, was funded by the taxpayer dollars.
Right.
And of course, taxes come in sales, local option penny tax, ad valorem taxes. So that's how the city gets their revenues. And then you have your enterprise funds like the Pensacola Energy, like the port, the airport, Osceola Golf Course, Roger Scott Tennis Center. So Roger Scott and Osceola were funded solely on a break even base. You have to break even in those two budgets. The
Okay.
general fund funded all our other recreation programming, and those where you submitted a budget request annually and they would give you your money and you'd have to raise some of it. They tell you couldn't get all you wanted all the time too. You just didn't
Right.
ask and get. You had to go through a budget process. But so with Osceola, we had an additional supplement that the general fund did have to supplement that budget to about $200,000 a year. And Roger Scott was about a break-even proposal. So that's how that whole department. But you got to remember, going from university recreation, where you're talking about students, intramurals, group exercise, climbing wall, outdoor adventures, to city recreation. Now you're talking about 93 city parks in Pensacola. You're talking about a tennis center, a golf course, athletics, 10 community centers and event spaces. So senior center. So it's a
That's
it's
a
a whole different it's a whole different ballgame. It's the same thing, managing people, programs, projects, facilities, budgets. That's what I do. And so it's the same, but it's different. It's different. And city government's different than university government.
right.
So for sure.
Does does it feel like a natural progression to you? that you start at
Ironically,
UWF running a smaller thing, and then you wind up at Eastern Kentucky running something a little bit bigger, somewhat similar, and then you want to just you continue to challenge yourself, take
yeah.
bigger roles. Does it feel natural to you?
Looking back, at 27 years old to be a director, I don't see that happening very often anymore. I don't know. I got lucky maybe, but I had a great resume, to start out at UWF for 4 years, student intramural supervisor, but then to get to run it because Miss Dillard left, I got to run the program. And so that's unusual for a student. And then in grad school, my boss, he was hands off. So we ran it again. Then I got the job in Wilmington for 3 years. Then I got that job at UAB, but UAB was not a big job. It was a small job. It was a one-person operation.
Right.
We made the case for the rec center. Over 10 years, we built that rec center where we had 13 staff, $3 million operation, 100 student workers, and an operation that we could be proud of. So that's all those things just really lined up for me a lot, Kevin. Now, I had to work to get that building, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it did line up for me, and I'm grateful. I'm blessed. And then to go to Pensacola, again, I'll be honest, when you're in university recreation your whole life, you think that's the pinnacle of recreation. You see the YMCAs, you see the military recreation, you see local government recreation, but you kind of a little snooty, you think you're the big, but then when you leave it and you get into community recreation, you realize, oh, this is just as big and just as important in a different way. And university recreation wasn't the biggest dog in town either. And if
Right.
I had gone to the YMCA or the military recreation, I probably would have seen that both of those were great avenues as well. And in their world, it's the most important thing, right? So
Right. Of course.
um, that's sort of where I got where I'm at.
Right. I think what's crazy is like your career and all community. I believe that there's a communal value in sports, right? And when you have, like, when I went to UWF, I played flag football, and all those guys that played flag football kind of had a thing with them. And then, just going out and, you're young, you're active, right? You're going and you're playing basketball in the afternoon or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
And so what winds up happening is it improves your college experience. Just very similar to the way that when you're growing up, having a pool to go to, or somebody being able to say, "Hey, do you have interest in tennis? Let's go to Roger Scott and do that." Having ballparks to play in, having places to be are vital for a community to feel unity with each other, right?
Absolutely. I think what I'm doing now is being more helpful to kids. At the
Right,
university, it was students. And to
right.
be honest, they're going to be gone in 4 years. Some of them hopefully sooner, but
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so that citizen came and went. When you work in the community recreation, they never leave. If you got a problem with somebody, you're going to have it for a long time unless you resolve it.
Right,
And you also have kids who you see at 4 and 5 learning t-ball, and then you see them going and making the high school baseball team, or not making the high school baseball
right.
team, but still coming back and wanting to work for you at the rec center. Those are really good moments for us around here.
Right. And all the other thing is too, I mean, it's providing jobs in the community. And when people are out and about, they're spending money in the community. I mean, it really helps the city, the circle. It helps the city
Sure,
spend.
absolutely. Yeah. When we built the splash pad in the playground here, it's about a $3 million investment. Um, the first weekend we were open, my guys went and picked up the trash, and they were like, "You wouldn't believe it. It's all Chick-fil-A bags and all McDonald's bags." And the people who came to Pelham stopped at our Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and Wendy's to get lunch and brought it to the splash pad. Well,
Right.
that helps, that our council members were excited to hear that, and our trash cans stay full of that kind of stuff. So we're glad our Pelham citizens are using it, but we're also glad that the cities right around us don't have the splash pad and the $1 million playground that we have, so that they all want to come to our town. It's a small way to contribute, but it's certainly economic development.
There's no small way to contribute. Not when
Well,
you're talking about people
yeah,
working, you know?
certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think from a worker's perspective, the fact that we have 25 high school, college age student workers working for us here is a blessing for them, and several of them came through our program. It's great to see.
Right. Right. Dude, let's take a break and come back. We'll talk about some the official aspects of it, and we'll talk about the
Yeah,
World Games and the Pro Bowl. Sound good?
sounds great. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Welcome back. Brian, now you said you started an officials organization, right, when you were in Pensacola as a young man. And
Yeah. So
then
when I was first umpiring, oh, I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
no. Go.
So when I was at UWF my second or third year, I'd been umpiring in the community, and I noticed that all the good umpires were working kid pitch and older. That the
Mm-hmm.
T-ball and the coach pitch was getting neglected.
Mm-hmm.
First year officials throwing people out there that didn't know what they were doing. Well, I had a bounty of officials at UWF that were working for me umpiring softball. And I had quite a few friends, Mike Gray, Mike Howe, Will Brown, some folks from I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
that were interested in officiating. So I took those guys at UWF because we were done by 5:30 because we didn't have lights on the intramural fields. And I took all my friends and I trained them to umpire T-ball and coach pitch. And I went out and got all the contracts at every ballpark in the county, except Perdido and go, out the beach. But I got from Molino to Myrtle Grove to Bellevue to Brent to NEP, and I had a contract to provide umpires. And so every afternoon when the games would end, I would send two to Myrtle Grove, two to Brent, two to NEP, two to wherever. And they were paying us $12 a game back then. And so these college kids were making $4.50 for me umpiring, and now they get to leave me and go run and make triple that. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really a great thing for me to help them, but it was also helping me because I got a fee for every game I assigned. So I was another avenue for me to make money, but it was also an avenue for me to get other guys into something I loved and enjoyed.
Right. But how old are you at this point?
Kevin, I was probably 20, 21, I went to college at
Right.
18. So I was in my second or third year at UWF. I think I did it for 3 years before I
Right.
graduated and left.
And that became your goal to be, and you've umpired SEC things, right?
I've umpired some college baseball, never at the SEC level.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, never at that level. I've got some kids that work for me that I've trained that have gone on to referee in the NFL and the SEC. Very proud of some of those guys, Ryan Hagan, James Carter, some of those guys that have made it. I'm real proud of them.
Right.
And so we say made it, but really making it is where you love to be. And so for
Right.
me, I loved being on the high school football field, and I
Right.
enjoyed every Friday night. I love being with my guys and working a game and bringing that home at the end of the night where we can walk off the field with our head high and have both coaches say, "Good job, guys."
Right.
Didn't always
And
happen.
right. But also though, that's high level competition. The
Yes,
the Birmingham area,
yeah, for sure.
that's good
You,
ball players in it. Go
there
ahead.
was a time. There was a time when the state would need somebody, and there were three or four people they would call on. They would call our association and say, "Hey, I want this crew to go here," or they'd call this Birmingham Association. I want them to go there, even if it meant we traveled a little further. And I was blessed to be selected to go do a lot of those games, not just the state championship games, but I did the Prattville versus Foley game when Julio Jones was down at Foley. That was a mad scene. It was 10,000 people. They brought a lion in from the zoo because they were both the lions. I mean, it was a great atmosphere. My mom came in watching the referee. That's the only time she ever watched me referee. So that was a great atmosphere. And so getting selected to do those games almost meant just as much as being selected to work the three state championship games.
Right. So how does the Pro Bowl come about?
I tell you what, so the Pro Bowl is switched from tackle to flag football now, and the
Right.
NFL is really, really getting behind flag football at the
Right.
youth level. They've got the NFL flag program. They've just received proposals to start an adult men's and an adult women's NFL professional flag league. Colleges are starting to do it now. I just refereed my first college doubleheader last Saturday. So flag football is taking off. An old friend of mine works for RCX Sports out of Dothan, out of Atlanta, but Dothan. Um, and RCX Sports hired my friend Jason Powers to be the national director of NFL flag officials. He gets the officials for all 32 regional tournaments, the super regional and the national youth flag football tournament. Well, RCX was hired by the NFL to run the Pro Bowl week. So they said, Jason, go get officials. So he rounded up the usual suspects, and much of us and Jason was my first graduate assistant at UAB that I told you about earlier.
Right.
So, we had a tight relationship. So he said, hey, you want to come work the Pro Bowl? I said, Hell yeah. And my son got to go referee it. It was cool because my son had just worked the high school state championship game in flag football girls here in Alabama. So
Mhm.
he got to go. And in order to get one more old school guy down there, I opted off the field and I was the Peyton Manning assigned official. So I worked the sideline with Peyton the whole game while my son and the other guys and gals were on the field. And that was really a reward for me seeing my son referee the Pro Bowl. So I
Right.
didn't actually throw a flag in the Pro Bowl, but I was Peyton Manning's assigned referee. I was dressed as a referee, and I kept up with his timeouts, his blitzes, when they could run and when they couldn't run or pass. So
Right.
Peyton and I, we got to know each other for a couple hours.
Developed a little bit of a rapport.
I didn't get his phone number, but I did get his autograph. So,
He's a
but
cool guy though, right?
yeah, man, he was really down to earth, man. He's like, hey, Brian, can we run here? I said, yes, sir, you can run. Hey, Brian,
Yeah.
can I blitz? No, sir, you got to blitz us.
Right.
So, just that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
cool. Joe Burrow come up and spoke to me. Hey, will you tell me when I can run and pass? I said, well, not while you're in the game, but I'll tell you right now, if you're down in the fives, you can't run. You got to throw. So he
Right.
said, okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. So
Right. Right.
Russell Wilson was kind of like, really down to earth. I mean, got
Right.
to speak to some of the athletes. That was cool.
Right. Well, tell me this too. Like, obviously, people get critical of things like that, but to me, of them changing the Pro Bowl from, but to me, it's like, well, A, you're not going to ask those guys to go out there and hurt themselves when their season's over.
No,
So
they're not going to do it.
why not do it? Are the players enjoying the environment?
They were having a blast. There was so many competitions that you didn't see, or maybe if you watched the game, you did. But they had the skills competition the 2 nights before. During the game, they had a tug of war for all the offensive and defensive linemen, where if you lost, you fell in this big pit of foam. They had throwing and punting and kicking competitions during timeouts and
Mhm.
intermissions. They all had a blast. They gave their effort. That's what was most important. The product you see on TV is effort. The
Right.
the old Pro Bowl was a bad product for television, and they
Right.
and I think everybody knew it.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like to me, the only game you can really play full speed in an all-star environment is baseball. You
Yeah,
know,
but you're in for one inning. You're only going to go out there one inning and play, right? But
right.
that hockey
Right.
now, the hockey this year was something else. I don't know if you watched the hockey. That was something else.
Well, what they've done, and then you hear the they did the basketball should try to emulate it, but what they've done is smart, right?
Yes,
They having the world versus the world thing, and I don't know. I watch a little pro wrestling, Brian,
I watch a little bit myself.
and those guys getting into a fight right at the beginning of it, it felt a
Oh,
little
that was
bit like
great, wasn't it?
little
That was
pro
great.
wrestling. You know what I mean? You want to
Yeah,
get
sure
somebody
did.
interested in a tournament? Have a couple guys
Yeah,
throw hands real quick.
no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah,
Everybody watched the second night, didn't they, to see if they were going to do it again?
ratings shot through the roof. That's all you
They
needed.
did.
A little
Yeah,
boost, a little boost. But
that's
okay,
it. Little boost.
yeah. So let's transfer. What are the World Games?
So when I had gotten when at Pensacola, I had done 10 years. So I had my retirement with the state of Florida set aside, and I had an opportunity to come home. Somebody called me and said, "Hey, we're doing the World Games. We'd love you to be a part of it." An old friend. I said, "Man, let me think about it." And I said, "You know what? I think I can get a job when this is over back in Alabama." And I needed to get back to Alabama to finish my state retirement with Alabama anyway one day.
Right,
So coming home, Pensacola's home, but
right.
this is
I get
also
it.
my second home. So getting to come back here, go to work for the World Games, and then parlay that into another job with another city has really been another blessing in my life. The World Games is a tier right below the Olympics. So the Olympics can only have 10,000 athletes at their games.
Mhm.
So they have to make decisions every 4 years on what's going to be an Olympic sport. For example, if you do softball, there's 25 players per team, 10 teams. You can see the math adds up real fast. You got to get rid of 8 or 9 individual sports to counter that addition. That's why you don't see softball offered every 4 years. If it's in America or Japan, softball will be in the Olympics. Anywhere else in the world, probably forget it.
Right,
So the World Games is a tier below. It's the same level of security as the presidential motorcade. It's the same as Super Bowl. It's the competition is intense, but it's another 32 sports that are all want to be Olympics. They all want to be Olympics, or they're just unique. They know they'll never be Olympics, but it's a grand old time.
right.
Tug of war, for example. tug of war. These people love tug of war, but they're probably never going to be an Olympic sport. There's so many
Right.
of them on a team, right? But then there's boules, Boulles. There's racquetball, squash, flag football, lacrosse. So it's a gamut of sports, and the whole world comes into play.
Right.
I met one of the greatest sumo wrestlers of all time. Got my picture with him. I was running the martial arts events, so getting to hang out and see the sumo event was awesome. And so I ran 11 of the 32 sports, and we just had a really good time doing that. I got to know some more people, and then the timing worked out perfect. As the World Games were wrapping up, the City of Mobile Parks and Rec director job was open, and the City of Pelham Parks and Rec director job was open. And so I interviewed for both of them, and Mobile offered me the job. Well, I was just going to drive from Pensacola over to Mobile every day, that was so they offered me the job. But I was really wanting to come back here and not make that drive every day. And I needed, but either way, I was going to be back in Alabama and back to my retirement program. So Mobile offered me the job, and then Pelham called and offered me the job, and I was able to accept the Pelham job. And come kind of back home. My son lives here. My grandsons are here. My girlfriend at the time was here. So it was just the right decision for me at the time. And I love it here. Pelham's a great city. I got a great boss. The city council's an awesome group. My coworkers are great. I've never been in an environment like this where everybody's just a great team. So
Right.
I do love it here. I got 6 more years, maybe 7, and then I'll be back to Pensacola. My home's still there. I still have my house there in Cantonment. I love coming home, but I love coming back here and seeing my grandkids and get back to work.
Right. Right. So, okay, I think this is interesting too, as we're starting to wrap. You remember where, obviously, you remember working with the Tornadoes.
Oh yeah, yeah,
The Pensacola Tornadoes, they were the Continental Basketball Association. You were the merch director there at some point, right?
yeah. I was hired to sell merchandise in the auditorium, and the game or second game, the lady quit, and the general manager said, Here's the merchandise, here's the schedule, handle it." I
Right.
said, "Yes, sir." So I became the merchandise seller. I didn't order merchandise; they ordered all the merchandise. But within like 3 weeks, I realized there's no inventory controls. So I set up some inventory controls, presented it to him, and he loved it. And we put them all in this big locker, and I gave him the combination, and I had the combination. I said, if at the end of the year this don't add up, it's because you took stuff out and didn't write it down. So here's a sheet, write it down, and I'll make this balance. And
Right.
so I ended up doing that for the 3 years. The Tornadoes were there until I graduated. I think they ended up moving to Birmingham, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yeah.
but I loved my time with the Tornadoes. My buddy Mike Gray worked with me down there.
Yeah.
Kevin, this is about sports, and I get it. We Sports is not just playing ball. It's not just
Right.
getting to go manage like Buck Showalter or play like your guest recently that you had on
Yeah.
from right down the road from you.
Right. Right.
So Dave Partridge.
Dave
So Dave
Parker.
and I
Right.
worked in the city together for 10 years. He's a great man. I love Dave, but it's not just about those avenues. There's so many more avenues you can go and go and be anything you want in life. But it's also not about sports. A lot of our friends grew up. They went to work. A lot
Right.
of them went to school to become teachers.
Right.
Don Gaines is the great example. Kelly Appley. They went on
Yeah.
and became teachers. Craig Morgan went to work. He owns his own business. It's just find your passion, man.
Right.
Find your passion. I know what you do for a living, but I know your passion is doing what you're doing today with me. I can tell it, buddy. I can
Yeah.
see it on your face. When I go see where you work, I don't see that passion as much. I think I see the passion for me because you've seen a long lost friend. But
Right.
yeah, it's just, man, find your passion, whatever it is, and chase it.
Yeah.
My dreams of officiating in the pros, I had to set them aside because I had 4 sons, and I would never change that for 1 minute.
Right.
But my road on that journey to getting there was so rewarding. I mean,
Right.
I can't. I met so many of my friends today. My phone is full of contacts, and a lot of them are from officiating.
Right.
Um, and I can call just about any of them and say, "Hey, man, can you help me out?" Or, "Hey, man, you want to go to a Braves game?" "Yeah, man, let's go." So
Yeah.
um, I count a lot of them as real close friends. I've still got a few good friends in Pensacola, but you amongst them. So thanks for having me on here today, man. This has been great.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Let's wrap on that. I want to say one thing though first. What's
Yeah.
amazing to me, Brian, is at every turn when somebody said, "Hey, can you do more?" You said, "Yeah."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever it is, when you're chasing a goal, and those goals weren't just I made them up one day at my apartment in on off Scenic Highway. Those goals were life goals, and they
Mhm.
weren't just the two about chasing um, the pro leagues. That was not my only goals. I had 10 goals, and
Right.
so I can look back and say I checked off most of them. But to get there, you had to just chase.
Right.
Whether it's like again, I'm doing the flag football now, but I'm doing it with my son. It's a
Right.
whole nother reward now. We worked those 2 games last week in Montgomery, and it was just the money was nice, but the time was just great. We rode together, we ate lunch together, we refereed together, we came home, we ate dinner together. So,
Right.
but anybody out there that's young wants to get into sports but didn't make it on the field, I bet you most managers sat the bench.
Mhm. Yeah.
Very few head coaches were star players,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So very few equipment managers were star athletes.
Right.
Very few people who referee the games were star athletes. Everybody I referee with likes to tell me they were great back in the day, but I know better. So,
Right.
but there's just whether it's professional, minor league, we've got the Birmingham Bulls hockey team here. I know some of the guys over there, and they work their tail off for that one
Right.
little boost of excitement that night, just like the Tornadoes.
Yeah.
And minor
Or
league
the
sports is great. The Wahoos are great.
or the
So
Stallions.
or the Stallions, yeah,
Yeah.
or anything. Yeah, and I've got friends that work with Stallions. When I was working for the World Games, their offices were above ours in the same building. So I would ride the elevator sometimes with Moose Johnson. Man, that dude was as down to earth as there is, man. He would be like, "Hey,
Right.
man, how you doing? Hey, Moose, Brian Cooper. Hey, oh yeah, yeah. Well, you came up the other day and we talked." And so just, sports is a great avenue, but you don't just have to go play or manage. There are way many more ways to get into
Right.
sports. Your local YMCA is a great place to start. Your college intramural office. Look, I've gone on 20 ski trips to Colorado in my life. Almost all of them were paid for by the university because we were running an outdoor adventure program and
Right.
taking people on adventures, whether it was whitewater rafting, Hawaii, canoe and kayaking, or snow skiing. I got to lead 20 weeks of snow skiing trips to Colorado.
Right.
And so it's there's all these avenues. Group fitness, if you want to, fitness is your thing.
Right.
Just find what you love and chase it, man.
Right. Well, that's a great place to end, man. Brian, thank you
Like
so
like
much for
Dave
your
Parks.
time.
Dave Parks is still playing baseball at his age. What is Dave Parks? 65, 68?
He's 55.
Hope he's not listening. I know how old Dave is. I know it.
I hope he
You grew up
does
right
hear
down the
that.
road from him, didn't you? Y'all both grew up on the same road, didn't you?
Dave is probably my first friend.
Yeah.
I like literally Brian, literally next door to where I'm doing this interview is First Baptist Church of Cantonment,
Yeah.
and I
I used to
met
go there.
him. I met him upstairs in the pre-K. So yeah,
I
he's
went there. I went there a few times because to play on the softball team, you had to come to church twice a month.
which is
So I,
not a
I
bad
was
way to
I
get folks involved.
got me in the door. It got me in the door.
It
I
did.
was
It
saved
did.
in that church, man. So
That's
I've
right.
been saved a few times, but I was first time saved was in that church. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
man.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Hey,
Appreciate you.
man. You work Sundays, right?
I do. Come see me.
I'm gonna come see you, brother.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Mhm.